Good afternoon and welcome from Little Rock, Arkansas. So today we're going to understand how to apply the NCLEX-RN Blueprint as the basis to set up the ExamSoft database and how this applies to the Strengths and Opportunities reports, which can aid in student success. So he told you a little bit about me. I will tell you a bit about our university. We're a medical sciences college. We have a College of Medicine, Pharmacy, Nursing, Health Professions, Public Health, and a graduate school. We're implementing ExamSoft in our BSN program. We have around 220 students on our Little Rock campus. Those are juniors and seniors together, and around 30 students in our Hope, Arkansas campus. We have an attrition rate of less than 10% here. And for a little bit of bragging rights, our NCLEX pass rates have been above 90% for the last 3 years. So last year it was 94.7%. The previous 2 years was 90.8 and 90.3. However, in 2011 our NCLEX pass rate was 74%. Basically, the national average for the BSN pass rate for 2014 was 85.3%. So we've set our bar really high. How have we done this? We put several student success strategies in place. One thing that we did was we added on a full-time academic coach. We monitor our students closely and try to identify at-risk factors early on, which is not just that they have not done well on an exam, but they may themselves come to us and say, I need some assistance, I don't feel like I'm doing as well as I possibly can. Our academic coach meets with our at-risk students, or they can meet with any student, and they can do this individually or group remediation. And we do have ongoing remediation throughout our program. We also have a senior capstone course. We also use assessment technologies, ATI. So that has resources, remediation tools, standardized testing, and we use that throughout our curriculum to ensure that our benchmarks are being met. So in each course, the students have tutorials that they have to complete, and then at the end of that course, they have to take that standardized exam, and if they don't make a specific score, they must do remediation. ATI uses NCLEX categories. So that was another bonus for us when we saw ExamSoft. So after having the 94.7% pass rate, we had to ask ourselves, what other strategies can we put in place to support student performance and student success? So to back up just a little bit, we were having some security issues with our current learning management system and using the testing platform in that. And so that made us think that perhaps we should consider other testing platforms. Where our College of Medicine and College of Pharmacy had already adopted ExamSoft, and they had really positive things to say about it, so we decided that we would ask for a demonstration. We saw that demonstration last year in spring of 2014, and there were a lot of features that piqued our interest: the question categories, the test plan blueprint, and the reporting functions, the reporting features. So as a faculty, our faculty council, which we value everyone's opinion here, we voted to pilot ExamSoft. So we decided we wanted more than one person's opinion. I wanted someone else to give their opinion about ExamSoft besides myself. So I volunteered and was simultaneously appointed to lead this project because of my informatics experience. There is a faculty member that we have who teaches senior courses who has a strong informatics background as well. So we agreed to pilot in our junior pediatrics course, and we have 3 rotations of peds, 1 in the fall and 2 in the spring. And then the senior courses were acute care of adults and care and management of adults. So we piloted in the fall of 2014 and the spring of 2015. And they asked that we bring our outcomes to the council for a vote on whether or not to adopt in the spring of 2015. So we did our pilot, and we brought a presentation to our faculty council, and we talked about things like ease of use, all of the features that ExamSoft offered us, student feedback, And then comparison, well, actually, at that point, the faculty asked us for a comparison to our current learning management system. So we had to go out and pull that system and meet with those people and do a comparison. And what we found was that it did have some of the same features. It had parts of some other features, but it still required a lot of manual compilations to get some of the same results. So we voted, and it was a narrow approval to adopt ExamSoft, not because they didn't like ExamSoft, but because we had several other changes going on in our College of Nursing Baccalaureate program, and it really felt like another burden on everybody to try and take on something else right now, but we decided to go ahead and proceed. So moving forward, we signed our contract, got delivery of product, and did our initial training. So now we have this empty database, and we need to start setting it up. What we decided to do was to establish a subcommittee, and this was a fair faculty representation of our BSN program that came together to help us make these decisions. And we're still making decisions as we move forward. There's still a lot of exam strategies that are under discussion, but sometimes you have to take baby steps to get faculty to adopt, so we're still working on some of those things. One of the other issues that we had with adopting ExamSoft and taking on something new is our College of Medicine and College of Pharmacy that had such great things to say about ExamSoft have support staff that actually help them build their database and who help them put their questions in the system and categorize them and builds their exams for them. Unfortunately, in the College of Nursing, we don't have that luxury, so it's an additional workload for us. So, of course, using the NCLEX client needs categories for questions is not a new concept. As a matter of fact, I was studying for the CNE exam, and it provides specific examples of how to plan and develop an exam, and they advise you to use the Bloom's Taxonomy of Learning and the NCLEX test plan. So there's a lot of options to consider when you're trying to assign categories to exam questions. Even when you look at the NCLEX client needs categories, there are 4 major categories, and 2 of those major categories are divided into subcategories. We decided to focus on the categories that had percentiles assigned to them, and then the other categories we left available in the folders to use as a resource, and I'll show those to you in just a minute. But I also wanted to say that the NCLEX-RN exam uses Bloom's taxonomy as well, and the majority of their items are written on an NCLEX-RN, are written at an application or higher level of cognitive ability. And so that's something that we're going to work on and hopes to achieve when we build our exams as we move forward. So ultimately that would be our goal. So here's the distribution of content for the NCLEX-RN test plan. You can go out and on the website and look at the test plan. Be sure and look at the educator's version because it gives you a lot more information than just the simple version that the students might look at. So as you can see, for their exam, they have 14% physiological adaptation and so forth with all of the other categories. They do allow for a 3% variation in each category. Here's another breakdown of those categories and the percentages, so you can see the 4 main categories and then the subcategories that have percentages assigned to them. So it's really beneficial when you build your categories that you include these percents next to each category so that as your blueprint, your test blueprint comes up, you can already see what the percentage required is and compare it to the percentage of your actual exam. So when you go into the ExamSoft database, I'm sure most of you are familiar with that. and you click on the Add or Remove category on the left side of the screen for a question. All that we're asking our faculty to do is to choose one of the client's needs categories and one Bloom's category. When you look at our folder that holds our categories, this is just a snapshot of it. I certainly did not expand everything, but you can see the percentages are included next to like health promotion and maintenance, basic care and comfort, all of those categories that NCLEX uses. So I wanted to show you, though, that we did include the breakdown of each one of those categories, and we use those as a guide when we are selecting categories for each question. Another example, you know, these are just subcategories in the health promotion and maintenance. This is just the breakdown for that, and we just felt like that was way too much to burden our faculty with. When you're building questions and you're building an exam, you really want to try to move through that process. You have a lot of other responsibilities to consider. So we didn't want to burden everybody down of having to read through all of them to select the best category. Also, the NCLEX-RN exam includes the following fundamentals of nursing practice. They're integrated throughout the client's need categories. So the nursing process, caring, communication, and documentation, and teaching and learning are included in that. A lot of people have asked us, are you using the nursing process to categorize questions? But we felt like we should truly follow the NCLEX example, so we are not asking our faculty to select that category as well. So ExamSoft has a display in their assessment or in the exam that shows the exam blueprint in percent and numbers of questions associated with each category. So as you can see, since we built the percentages with each category, with each client needs category, you can see that physiological adaptation is 11 to 17% is the way that the NCLEX exam is built. And if you look to the right on this specific snapshot, there were 36 questions in this category, which was 51% of the exam. Now that's not within the expected parameters in this example, but you get the idea. Okay, so this is a snapshot from our database. This is an exam. You can see that the questions are listed there starting with number 1, and you can see through number 33 here. But on the left side of the screen, as you build your exam and save it, it compiles a blueprint for you, and it tells you if you're meeting your expectations. So on the left-hand side, you can see physiological adaptation, 11 to 17% is our expectation. That's what we're hoping to meet. And in this specific exam, there are 22 questions in that category, which is 31%, which is, again, not in our expected range, but you get the idea. So it's really nice and convenient to have that sitting there as you're building your exam so that you can easily delete questions and then slip back over into your test bank, your question bank, and pull in different questions that help balance out your percentages. So our questions are, which categories are appropriate for each question? If we don't correctly assign the categories, then we're going to fail to meet our objective. So how do we know and trust that we're correctly assigning these categories? It's hard to say that because we don't have experience doing that. Fortunately for us, we use a lot of existing test banks. So most of our textbooks have existing text banks that we have actually downloaded and then imported into ExamSoft, and a lot of them have categories pre-assigned to them. So if the filter that we're using to import those test banks don't pick up those categories, we have asked ExamSoft to build us specific filters that include those categories, and they have been great at doing that. Within 2 to 3 weeks after every request, they've done a filter for us, and we've uploaded those test banks. And so those categories have pre-assigned. But then you have to ask yourself the question, do we assume that whoever assigned the categories that built these test banks have training and experience, and can we trust that they're correct? And we don't really know the answer to that question. Now, you can go out to the NCLEX-RN detailed test test plan booklet and select the one for educators. It gives you a lot of definitions for the categories, and it gives you a lot of buzzwords. So you have that available to you when you're trying to select your categories and assign them to your questions. However, it still seems to us like that's a lot of work for assigning categories, and so we're out there right now trying to find some kind of class or course or someone that can come here and do some education with us to help us have a better understanding of how to assign categories and to make sure that we're doing that correctly. Now, we did use the State Boards of Nursing website. They have a test development and item writing course. It's an online course, and it provides you with 17.5 CEUs, which is great, but it doesn't go into a lot of detail about assigning categories, but it does give you a lot of information about how to construct exams and actually how to write exam questions. And that's something that we're going to move forward with, is writing more of our own test questions. So moving forward, our test review committee could be considered the experts to help identify and clarify if questions have been categorized correctly. Now, we don't currently have a test review committee, but we have talked about creating one to help us make sure that we're meeting these standards and expectations that we're setting for ourselves. And so what we would do is submit our exams to them, and they could review and go, hey, I think that this category should be changed to this, and your percentages are a little off, so perhaps you should make some changes to your exam. So why are we doing all of this? Why are we worrying about categorizing our questions this way? Well, how is this going to help our students? You can use the Strengths and Opportunities reports for your students. So you can do a Strengths and Opportunities report after each exam, or you can do them longitudinally. So you can do them per course or across courses. I'm going to show you a snapshot of that in a couple of slides. But when you look at it, you'll see that it shows the students the question categories and how they performed in each categories. And we're hoping this is going to help support and guide them on how to study for the NCLEX exam. So one of the questions that we had while we were piloting was, how do the students, do they understand about the NCLEX Blueprint at all? And do they understand how to tie this into their learning and to their own success? So what we found in the first rotation that we piloted was that they didn't access the reports at all. And even if they did, they didn't understand what they looked at. So the next rotation, what we decided to do was a little presentation, and we actually pulled up the NCLEX-RN exam blueprint, and we showed it to them, and we explained the categories and how it was broken down. We also explained to them that our ATI that we use for our standardized testing uses the same categories. And we told them, if you will print these reports after each exam, it will show you where your weaknesses are, and so for the next exam, perhaps you can focus your studies more in that area and bring your test scores up. Let's see. We also are encouraging our students, if they are at-risk students, we require that they come and meet with the faculty and discuss why they performed poorly on an exam or why they're not doing well in the class. And so having them go ahead and print that Strengths and Opportunities report and bringing it with them to our meeting with the faculty, then it can be reviewed and we know they're actually using it as a tool. So I split that report in half so that I could make it bigger and you could actually see what it looked like. So this is the top half of the Strengths and Improvement or Strengths and Opportunities report. You can see that you can actually select the things that are reported on this, and you can select specific categories that are reported here, but on this one I did the student score and then the average score in the class. For some reason the students like to know where they fall. It seems to motivate them if they're not doing well. And then as you can see, it shows you if you are doing well in a specific category with the green triangle, whether or not they need to review that category with the yellow dot or the red upside down triangle if they need improvement. So the second half of that report looks like this. So as you can see on this specific student report that I ran, let me go backwards. Okay, I've got it on another screen. So on this specific report for health promotion and maintenance, which you need 6 to 12% of your questions on that exam to meet the NCLEX Blueprint, there were actually only 2 questions on this exam that were in that category. The middle column, the 98.44%, is how the class performed in that category. That was the average. And then the 100% was that student's score. So you can see, they can look at this and see how they performed in the categories. So again, you can run this report at any time during the program. You can look at the reports as they proceed. You can ask them to look after each exam. You can ask them to look after each course, or you can actually run a report at the end of their program and see how they were performing overall. And we're thinking that it's most beneficial to run a report right before or during their capstone, their senior capstone course. And that way they have identified where their weaknesses are, and while they're studying for the NCLEX-RN exam, they can focus on questions in that category. And here is an example of a longitudinal report that I ran for one specific course, and it picked up 4 different exams, exams 1, 2, 3, and 4. And as you can see, it shows the categories and the group performance in those categories from those 4 exams, and then the specific student whose name I've blocked out, it shows the percentages and how they performed in that category. So it's not difficult to run these reports. It just takes a few minutes and to hand them out to the students, and then hopefully they can use them as they move forward and study for the NCLEX exam. And if they do that, maybe their NCLEX scores will be, they'll have a passing NCLEX score the first time that they take it. So as we move forward with implementing ExamSoft, we plan to get all of our courses online in the next academic year. We're going to continue to collect data specifically about student adoption and their attitudes. We got a lot of feedback from students as we implemented. Most of their complaints had to do with my errors. For example, on one test, I forgot to select the button that gave them their score at the end of the exam, so they all said something about that, but that was my problem. It wasn't about ExamSoft and the way that it's structured and built and functions. So we'll continue to see specifically if they're accessing their reports and if they feel that they're beneficial. We also want to see, do we need to police ourselves and create that testing committee that will review all exams to see if they actually mimic the NCLEX-RN Blueprint. You know, we have a lot of faith and trust in our faculty members, and so we feel strongly that they will be able to and that they will build their exams this way as we move forward. However, we need to be able to support each other, and we need the right people in place with the right training to help do that. So, and eventually we will look at the NCLEX pass rates and hope that they stay where they are or get even higher because we've put this into place. And we will also continue to establish best practice guidelines. And that's all that I have for you today. And I guess we will take questions now.
Very nice. We've got a few questions, and it looks like some are coming through right now. So for all the attendees out there, if you have any more, send them on my way. The very first question that I have is, what was your timeline for implementing and then tagging all of your questions to categories?
Okay, so that's a good question. So what we have done is our previous testing platform that we used, we had exams built in that. So we were able to export those exams and then import those exams into ExamSoft and put them in their own folder and just call them, these are our previous exams. And so each one of those questions, if we want to use them again, we'll open them, put the categories, assign the categories to them, and then move them to whatever folder is appropriate for that question. Then also we've uploaded the test book, test bank, and if we look through those chapters that that this specific test will cover, and we identify a question that we want to use, at that point in time we assign the categories and we move that question to the appropriate folder where it will belong from now on, and then we can add it to our exam. So we're going to do this in real time, but it's unrealistic to think that every single question that we've uploaded from our previous test banks and from our test book text banks will be completely coded with categories and put in the appropriate folders immediately as each course begins. Instead, we'll just focus on it one question at a time as we build our exams and hopefully be able to accomplish it over the course of 1 to 2 years.
Awesome. I know you mentioned at one point during the webinar that you had taken some advice from the state board and had taken a course with them. But are you also tagging your questions to state board requirements and even national requirements beyond that?
No, we're tagging our questions strictly based on Bloom's and client needs categories, which is how the NCLEX-RN exam is set up, and that's how they assign categories to their questions. And so right now, it's our decision to stick strictly to that and not move beyond it, because we want this database to remain manageable for all of our faculty members. We don't want to overwhelm them any more than we have to. So right now, that's what we're going to stick to. And if someone has a suggestion or idea or recommendation or something they're doing, I would love to hear that.
Totally. Next question, and this kind of piggybacks on the last one, and I think you've already answered it pretty sufficiently, but I do want to make sure that we cover it. What do you do about meeting course and program outcomes? Is that part of the category structure at all? It sounds like it's not, but I'm sure you still have to think about those outcomes. So what do you do?
Sure. So all of our courses have course objectives, of course, and our programs have program objectives, and all of that is tied in to our content as we teach the course. So if our questions are based on the content that we're teaching, then we're meeting those objectives. Good question.
Sorry, I had some trouble with my mute button there. The next question. Did you make ExamSoft your only testing environment once you decided to move forward, or are you still testing in your LMS?
Well, that's a good question. So originally, when we decided to pilot ExamSoft in our one junior course and our one senior course, because our university belongs to the state of Arkansas, we have to ask for approval to add fees to our student fees. And so we did not have enough time to include the expense of ExamSoft in their student fees for the pilot. So the students, when they set up their account with ExamSoft and SoftTest, they had to pay the fee out of pocket, which was like $52 and some change. This was one of their biggest complaints. The students weren't expecting to have to pay that out of pocket, so they weren't very happy about it. But as we moved forward, we included that expense in with their fees, and so that is hidden. So go back and tell me what the question was again.
The question was, once you decided to move forward with ExamSoft, did you make it your only testing environment, or do you still do some testing in your LMS?
Okay, that was my point then. So because we are adding this expense to student fees, we feel obligated that we should provide this service to them since they're paying for it. So our goal is to get most of our courses online with ExamSoft as we proceed through the next academic year. We have 1 or 2 exceptions, but it's only because there's other major changes going on in those courses, and we feel like adopting ExamSoft is a big burden on top of what the changes they're already making. So we've made exceptions for 1 or 2 courses, but other than that, all of the other courses will be online with ExamSoft for this coming academic year.
Okay, thank you. Next question. Are you using any supplemental assessment tools such as ATI, the assessment tools, or the HESI exam?
So I mentioned earlier that we use ATI, and we put those student success strategies in place. ATI included about 3-4 years ago, and I don't want to go into a lot of detail about that because we've collected a lot of data about that, and that is just being compiled and is getting ready to be published by a couple of other faculty members. But it's been pretty extraordinary, you know, bringing our NCLEX scores up as high as we have, and we can attribute a lot of that to ATI. But that really is a supplement to each class, to each course, just to tell us, are the students meeting the objectives, are they understanding, are they learning what they need to in the class so that they can be successful as we move forward. But I do want to point out that when I was studying for the CNE, I did read in that book that specifically that standardized tests should not be used to predict NCLEX success. But they are useful in predicting success of high-performing learners in passing the NCLEX, but it's less accurate in identifying learners who will fail the NCLEX. So I guess my point from that is you can't put all of your eggs in one basket. You've got to have a lot of success strategies, which we have 5 or 6 now in place to support our students. So we will be using ExamSoft, and then we'll continue to use ATI.
Okay, that works. This is a question from me, and I apologize if I didn't absorb this information as well as I should have while you were going through it. But it sounded like you were using a lot of questions that were coming from item banks that you had purchased, you know, like along with your textbooks and that kind of thing. How much do you actually develop your own items, and how much does your faculty develop their own items? And then does ExamSoft play any value into that?
Well, for our College of Nursing, the rule has been, and this was, you know, adopted by all of the faculty. It wasn't decided and we weren't told this, but it was agreed upon with the faculty here that we would use established test banks, that we would not write our own exam questions. However, over the last couple of years, we've talked about doing that and have a strong desire to do that. So that is one of the reasons that we did that item writing course from the NCLEX website to help us learn how to best write our own items. And just as an example, because ExamSoft is kind of my project and I'm kind of leading us down the path of trying this new strategy, I'm going to be going and taking another course next week on item writing and actually writing questions. And so we just want to make sure if we write questions that we do it and do it well. And, you know, getting as educated about that as possible is the key. You ask, does ExamSoft help us with writing questions? Since we're not really doing that, I would say no, but you'll have to tell us, is there something within ExamSoft that helps you know how to best structure a question and how to set it up?
There are psychometric tools within it that you can loop back around and see how the performance of your questions, or how your questions performed. But if you're not doing it yet, then that's fine. That's a great answer. That's totally fine.
Well, and to follow up with that, at the end of each exam, we do an extensive item analysis, which is so easy to do in ExamSoft. You just click on the button, the item analysis button, and we did, during our pilot, look at if, you know, we had used a question previously. We looked at how it performed on today's exam. We looked at it at the previous performance, because that's part of the item analysis that you can look at. And we can judge, is this a good test question or not? I mean, it's usually pretty obvious if a test question is not a strong question. And so what we can do is just pull it out of that specific exam easily. We can just delete it from that specific exam, and then ExamSoft automatically recalculates all of the grades, taking that one question or 2 questions out, and then we move forward and we know that that question either needs some work or we need to eliminate it completely.
Awesome. Okay, another question. Has the process that you've implemented impacted your curriculum development at all?
No, it has not impacted our curriculum development. We've done a lot of curriculum revision over the last 2 or 3 years. Of course, you know, again, supporting our NCLEX pass scores, that obviously that's been successful. So I think we feel like right now our curriculum is pretty strong, and so we'll move forward without changing curriculum and hope to see that next to ExamSoft that's another support tool to say our curriculum is strong. You know, if we have test questions and exams that perform poorly, then of course we look at ourselves and go, well, did I not talk about this in this lecture? Is it not something that's included? And you know, then we can make some appropriate changes that way. But as far as the level of the curriculum committee and changing the curriculum, I think we're pretty solid where we are.
Very good. That's good to hear, actually. Okay, so this is another question for me. Sorry, I keep butting in here. This is interesting. I'm looking at your moving forward slide right now, and seeing that, you know, your plan is to get more courses online with ExamSoft and to start collecting all that data and establish best practice guidelines. Let's say, like in a 5-year kind of plan, where would you like to be then?
Well, in 5 years, we would like to be able to say that our NCLEX exam scores, our NCLEX pass rate has remained high in the 90%. You know, we'd love to hit 100%, but, you know, I don't know if that's realistic or not. Life gets in the way sometimes with our students, and we don't have control over how they can perform sometimes. But in 5 years, hopefully our NCLEX pass rates will still be high, and we will be able to show that ExamSoft, next, along with and beside ATI, has continued to support our students' success so that they can pass NCLEX when they graduate. So hopefully in 5 years for sure everything will be well established and sailing along. I will say also though that the NCLEX Blueprint does update in 2014. So if you're going to proceed with categorizing your questions this way and using those percents, you should download the NCLEX Blueprint that starts in 2014. The ones that I showed you were up through 2013.
Very cool. So do you provide guidance or best practices on how to best prepare the question? Oh, wait, I think this is actually for me. Uh-oh, I'm sorry. The question is, do you provide guidance or best practices on how to best prepare the question database for nursing schools? And I can say yes, that we do a little bit. Sherri, I hope you jump in and also answer this just so you can speak to the experience of going through this with us, if we had those services then. We can give a very basic sort of, I want to say blueprint, but that becomes confusing when we're talking about exam blueprinting. So a very basic structure for how the categories should be organized within a nursing database. From there, your account manager typically works with other nursing schools so they can share, you know, they can share stories, you know, anecdotes about what maybe worked for another school. As far as formal guidance on how to prepare that database, we do a little, but none of us are nurses. We're, you know, software people. And so we really like to try to connect our clients with each other so that the guidance is coming from someone who truly knows how that, you know, who's been successful with it before and truly understands the field in a way that we never could. You know, we're all software people. And I don't know if you would like to speak to that also, Sherri.
Well, I can say that when our database was delivered to us, the NCLEX categories and the Bloom's categories and also the nursing process categories were already set up in our database. And I don't know if you guys did that because you knew that that was the direction that we were going in, or if that's standard when someone with a nursing program adopts ExamSoft. So those were already available to us. All we did was tweak them and add those percentages next to the title, the client's needs category title, so that when the blueprint comes up, the percentages are there and we know what we're trying to match. I know that I've talked to you, Carter, and to Jordan and a couple of other people about making contacts with other nursing schools that are using ExamSoft, and I don't know if I dropped the ball on that or we just never quite follow through with it, because usually there's a whole laundry list of things that we're working on together. But I think it would be fantastic if we had a way just to communicate with nursing schools only that are using ExamSoft. And also, someone mentioned to me about going to, going as an ExamSoft ambassador to nursing meetings and doing presentations like this. And so I'm hoping that as we move forward and attend meetings, we will see people come out of the woodworks and talk about their experience with building exams and using the NCLEX Blueprint and the success that their students have after doing that.
Awesome. Good to hear. And I'll take all that back. Sorry, that kind of, I rarely get questions when I host webinars, so it surprised me that it was for me. Thank you for jumping in there and helping. Next question. What kind of pushback, if any, have you gotten from faculty attempting to categorize questions? And if you did get some pushback, what was your response?
Well, like I said, we're proceeding with full implementation this fall and spring, so I can't answer that for all faculty. It's been mixed. I've had, some pushback from some faculty, but mostly because it is a burden. They feel like they've already done this in our previous testing platform, and so they don't want to have to repeat those actions again. And that's why it's really important that when you pull questions into your test bank from somewhere else that you've exported them from, that you go ahead and pull as much information as possible. To me, it's kind of silly to upload questions and not pick up those categories that have already been assigned. So if they're sitting there in front of you, all you have to do is click and attach them in your category section, and it's done. So it's not like it's going to be a real complicated situation, but just the fact that we have to go through the process of restructuring our exams in a new platform instead of just being able to copy them forward in our previous platform and then just give the exam. And we change out, of course, at least 20% of our questions every time, if not more. So I expect to have some pushback. Change is hard. Nobody likes change. We know that. We know in our hospitals and in our medical settings that they're implementing electronic health records across the nation, and so no matter where you go, somebody's pushing some kind of electronic database or some kind of, something at you that you have to learn. And so it's easy to say, no, I don't want to do this, but it's a part of our reality, so we may as well go ahead and have a positive attitude and try to move forward and make it as successful as possible. And ultimately, it's not about us and the burden that it puts on us. It's about helping our students to be successful and to become nurses and to say, hey, we helped that student get where they are today as a nurse on that floor. And so if this is part of doing that, then it's just part of being faculty.
Very nice. Next question, and there are quite a few. Thank you to all the attendees out there who are asking these really awesome questions. This next one is, if NCLEX ever changes its client needs year to year, what will be your process of modifying your database and your category structure in there in order to both retain your existing items and all the data that you have, the historical data you have for those items, and also be able to, match it up with that new, whatever the new thing that NCLEX is saying you should do?
So to date, it has been my experience, and it is our promise from ExamSoft that our historical data is unchanged regardless of how we move forward. That as we look back, everything is intact, and we will be able to understand and recreate what happened on a specific exam or with a specific test question or what have you. Now, as we proceed, if for some chance like they created some new category, NCLEX did, which I don't see that happening. I don't know how many years they've been using these categories, but I think they've been in place for quite some time. But if they did, I could see that we would just add that category, and as we use those questions for an exam again, we would know, hey, perhaps I need to look at the category bank again and see if I need to assign this new category to this specific question. I don't think we would remove the previous category. We would just add that as a third category so that as we move forward, we would know where we used to be with it and where we're going with it.
Very good to hear. And then this is actually the final question, unless we get another one while you're answering it. Can you go back over the process of getting your categories to the filters that we did to help you guys get your questions to match up to categories automatically whenever you loaded them?
Sure. So just as an example, this summer we're teaching health assessment and pathophysiology, and so I had 2 textbooks for that course and 2 separate test banks. Those textbooks came, just as an example, those textbooks came from the same publisher. And their test banks from both of those textbooks looked exactly the same. So I sent an example of a few questions from one of the chapters into our ExamSoft representative, who does a wonderful job for us, and she submitted it and they created a filter for us. So within 2 to 3 weeks, what I did was I identified that yes, we want the question, we want the answers, we want the categories, and we want the rationales. Why would I want to, while I'm building an exam, have to go out and figure out what the categories are and have to type my own rationales? So it makes sense if ExamSoft provides to you those fields that if you're uploading a test bank, you would pick that data up. So all I do is tell my representative every time what it is that we want to pick up from that test bank, and then they build a filter that picks that up. Now there's a lot of filters that are already in existence, and so she helps me go through those filters and sees, and we find out if there's one that already exists that picks up the data that we're wanting, and if not, then they'll make a new filter for us. But in this specific situation this summer, when I went to the second textbook, and so we got our filter delivered, and within 20 minutes I had uploaded 30 chapters worth of questions into our question bank. No problem. And so then I went to the next textbook to start uploading those chapters, and it was corrupted. It wouldn't work with that same filter. So I sent a copy of that to her, and I said, hey, this doesn't make sense. It comes from the same publisher. Look, here's a picture of what it looks like when you open up their test bank, and they're exactly the same. Well, I think they were probably either built by 2 different people, or they were built at separate times with a little bit of different code. And so it did not, that filter did not work on our second textbook. However, they were able to look at it and identify they just needed to make a couple of minute changes, and then that filter works just fine for the second textbook. So we've really not had any issues. The other thing is from our previous testing platform, exporting those exams and then importing those exams. That's a common testing platform that's used for a lot of college programs. So there were a lot of existing filters, but the filters that were in existence did not pick up the rationales, and we certainly don't want to have to go back and redo those rationales. So I asked for a filter to be created to pick up those rationales, and they're working on it. So it's just been right at 2 weeks since I requested that, maybe not quite that long, so I anticipate the next time you guys deliver new filters that one will be included.
Very cool, very cool. Okay, that looks like that was actually our last question, and I have no more for you. All I can say is thank you very, very much for doing this presentation for us. And can you advance one slide, please? Just so everybody is aware, the recording of this webinar will be on the resources page. It's learn.examsoft.com/resources. You can rewatch it or download a PDF of the presentation or access a certificate of completion for watching the presentation. As a side note, you will also receive an email with the recording in there. So you don't necessarily have to go to the resources page, but just so you know, if you ever forget that email or lose it, it'll be here. And then again, we do have another webinar coming up It's on June 24th at 1 p.m. Eastern, and it's about implementing computer-based testing at a medical school in Canada. So once more, thank you so much, Sherri. This has been an excellent presentation, and I really appreciate your attention to answering all the questions that attendees had.
Well, you're very welcome, and I'm available to talk to anyone one-on-one. You're welcome to give out my email address or my telephone number. I will be on a business trip next Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, but then I'll be back. I'm not saying that I'm all knowledgeable and that I have, that my experience makes me the end-all of doing this, by no means, because nursing informatics is a new field and there's constantly new things to learn, and just as soon as you learn it, people change things. And I also strongly believe that other people come up and think of and have ideas that you haven't thought of, so it's always good to work together. So I'm happy to work with anybody, and if you have suggestions for me, I'll be happy to hear those.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Oh, and wait, did we get one more question? No, we didn't. Never mind. Okay, I thought we did. I got excited there. So without that, and also with the thank yous, I'm going to go ahead and sign out of this webinar. Thanks to all the attendees. Thanks one more time to Sherri, and we'll look forward to talking to everybody in the future.
Thank you.